funds, I'm sure they're aware of it, but how they operate to actually access that money is a strategy that we need to learn more so. With respect to the practice of people in the private sector, where their bottom line is what they look at, rather than the social responsibility that we in an academic world are governed by ethics and those sorts of protocols may or may not apply directly to them. And so that is where this kind of synergy by policies driven by the governments for people to subscribe to certain rules of engagement may come to the fore. And very often in the scientific community, we have certain guidelines that may be in place by which we operate, but we may not have legal and other issues that operates in the other space outside of the scientific community. We identify those gaps, and that's where there's a space for academies to work towards providing a kind of consensus type study to raise where the gaps are and provide recommendations to government to guide policy. So that is the kind of approach I believe we should be adopting.
Firstly, I want to appreciate you and to appreciate your presentation today. What I particularly resonated with and loved was your language and your use of the word resilience. And what I thought was, if there's any gift that Africans have, it is the gift of resilience. And what I want to ask you is, how did you come about languaging it in this way? And in science and in our science making and in our science advice, how do we center societies and people to whom the science is for? And then also, how do you measure the impact of resilience?
Thank you. Something people want to avoid, and risk is something people want to reduce. And in the same way, you can kind of flip that to a consequence analysis. You can flip it upside down. And when you flip risk upside down, you can get to this more positive aspirational term of resilient. And I've been all over many, many places, and few people want to talk about risk. And everybody wants to talk about resilience. Everyone wants to be resilient. And the language is intentional, particularly for the policymakers that we engage. Because policymakers often do not want to take on the risks directly for lots of reasons, mostly because they feel they may not get reelected. But they do want to take on resilience because it's positive. So that's first part of your question on the language. On the measures, this is a very hard question. And one of the reasons we took the approach of disaggregating this complicated term of resilience down to those 5 things: the physical, the social, the natural, economic, etc., was because in the world, in the policy-making world, most people cannot take on another job. And so if you can start to put resilience measures into existing budget lines, so there's already a budget line for infrastructure and road repair or bridge repair. There's already a budget line for health metrics. And if you can start to piece in these resilience priorities into existing budget lines, you start to change the culture. We talked about culture. Start to change the culture of you can do these things and get multiple benefits from single investments. And so that's the very difficult answer of how to measure. We have a report coming out on measures of resilience in about 3 weeks, so I'll be happy to send you the link when that's out. But this is a very complicated, long-term set of issues.
My name is Colin Shembeirwe. I am from the Uganda National Young Academy and also the Global Young Academy. And my question goes to Professor Munavu, who spoke about engaging young scientists for smart development. I learned a lot about smart development in the context of the SDGs, but I don't know if I missed it or maybe we were caught up by time. I did not catch the concrete ways in which you suggested young scientists be engaged in this endeavor. I would really appreciate a recap. Perhaps I could have missed it. That's my question.
You want to say something? Okay, go for lunch. What is that?
Next session now.
The mom is holding her and trying to help her to walk. Sometimes you might even need the help of someone else. You might need the help of some other mentors to assist you with growing your mentee. Sometimes, at a point, you need to allow your mentee some space. Otherwise, the mentee will always remain on the floor. However, in giving the mentee some space, you're somewhere close by watching your mentee. You know, sometimes some of us can be very interested. We look at that little baby, adventurous, trying to do something he has never done before. But the mom is watching. See another naughty baby stepping on the chair and wants to do something adventurous. But the mom is watching. Because the mom is not saying don't do it, but he's trying to watch and see what's going to happen. And if there's going to be danger, then it quickly attends to the child. There are challenges of mentorship. One of them is when you have a mentor backing out others at the mentee. This is a big challenge for some of the mentees. You hear them shouting, screaming, backing out others. You must do this, you must do that, you must do this. That's a big challenge. And some of the mentees are always very fast. They want to make it fast. They want to get there like the mentors. They want to run and get there one day. I can assure you, they can never make it in one day because the mentors never got there one day. But that's a big challenge. And then we also have broken trusts. When trust is broken between the mentor and the mentee, then that becomes a big challenge. We also have mistrust between mentees and mentors. How do we solve them? First, if you have a bossy mentor, I would advise that mentors and mentees should be involved. And mentors should listen generously. I think this is a big problem. The mentors usually assume that the mentees don't have anything really good to say, anything really important to say. And once you approach your mentor and says, please be fast, I have just 1 minute. But it's important that we give our mentees some time and listen to them generously. They may be rambling, they may be saying something that doesn't make sense. But out of the nonsense, actually you as the mentor can make some sense. There's a word from Benjamin Franklin. It says, tell me and I forget. Teach me and I may remember. Involve me and I will learn. So the mentees need to be involved in the process of whatever the mentor is doing. And that way the mentee learns. Mentor says, let's do it. Not go and do it. That's supervision. Go and do it. You mean by the result. But the mentor says, please, let's do it. We can do it. We can make it. I'm running because of time. Hasty mentees. In the case of hasty mentees, mentors should help them learn some level of patience. And there's a word from James Linder. He says, we hurry over the road that stretches from childhood to maturity, only to discover that its most beautiful scenery escaped our vision. So we need to help the mentees understand that in the course of being in a hurry, you could escape or you could lose out on so many beautiful things that happens between your childhood and maturity. Broken trust and mistrust, both mentees should strive to build trust. I can't dwell on that because of time. Okay. Planning a mentee's future. Most times, we don't think that our mentees have to go. We always think that they should be with us till we go. But that's not always the case. Good mentor says you should find the time to allow your mentees to go. Allow them space to present their ideas while you shape them if need be. If they have fantastic ideas, encourage them. If the ideas need to be shaped them and help them to run with the ideas. Allow them to take on roles while you guide them. And then send them opportunities that will benefit them and guide them through the process of applying for opportunities that you find. It's very crucial. And I can say that the Nigerian Academy of Science have really been helpful in this direction. They've always guided us through with several opportunities. And I think it's important that other academies also invite this example. Be willing to release them to be on their own. There's a quote that says the delicate balance between mentoring someone is not creating in your own image. It's not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. But most often than not in Africa, we want to create an image of ourselves in our mentees. And that does not help. Because the mentees themselves, they are endowed with certain gifts and abilities. And like I said before, they are the future. And if you don't allow them to express themselves, then they have a great future. So we should allow them the opportunity to express themselves and to be creative. That way, they can become innovative. However, I have a dream, and I'm going to end with this quote of mine. And that dream says that soon there will be more credible science from Africa, by Africans, for Africa, and the world. The fulfillment of this dream begins with you and I. Thank you.
This session is different in the sense that we try and leverage what young people are doing and what the senior academies are doing. So first and foremost, in the interest of time, I think I have very few minutes. It is now 2018. How many strategic plans of NASA have been around? Does anybody know? We were constituted in 2001. This is 2018. We're talking about 17 years of our existence. How many strategic plans do we have? Anybody? Somebody? 24. 24 strategic plans. 5? 3, correct. So now, what I'm going to put my talk on is I'll tell you a little bit about the network, talk about those 3 strategic plans, tell you where we've networked, where we failed, where we've succeeded, talk about the milestones and the lessons we've learned therefrom. So taking from our 3 strategic plans, I start by saying that to date, we are staring at crossing the 24 mark. 24 mark that we had set for ourselves as our target from the previous strategy. Looking at how we started, in 2001, we only had 9 founding members, and over the years, we've increased to about 16 more, and then we've also considered the inclusion of additional academies onto our fold. The network thrives for 2 main reasons. One is to ensure that existing academies are indeed strengthened to deliver their mandate, but 2, to ensure that scientists see the value of science academies and then set up science academies. So we're looking into welcoming new members into the network depending on how our General Assembly meeting will go. So we start from the present before we go to the past. Our current strategic plan ends in 2022. It puts at the forefront the regional initiatives because we need to align our network activities with the AU strategies, with the STISA, with the UN SDGs, as well as Future Earth, and any other global or regional initiatives that we feel we should align ourselves to. Secondly, we have to constantly review what our SWOT analysis look like, to put in stopgap measures to ensure we are thriving, but also to remain relevant constantly as we go on. In our third strategy, we picked 5 strategic issues, and they are listed as you can see. So I'll just move on to the second strategy. Now you see, we started off with 5. The second strategy, before that, we started in 2011, moving on to 2017, because we rolled it over at 2015 when it ended. We now had 7 strategic priorities. But then what about the one before that? Which was our first ever strategic plan in 2008 and ran for only 2 years, but we called it a strategic action agenda, but it completely dealt on 10 major items. And the first 5, why you see me highlighting the first 5, we had actual substantial funding to be able to deliver on those, but the last 5, which formed the last bullet, we had to ensure that we were creative and found innovative ways of partnerships to make it deliver. Do you think that as a network, we've expanded our scope to a point that we can concisely document our vision in less terms and less words? Or do you think we've waned on our vision? And CISA 2024 and Agenda 2063, we've tried to map our activities onto the relevant aspects of those strategies. So we've done food, nutrition, security as a report that will speak directly to eradicating hunger and achieving food security. Done a policymakers book on health and well-being, speaking to that. We've also ensured that we communicate and ensure that people know that for science to thrive, it is both physical and intellectual mobility infrastructure in many of our forums and many of our activities. We've also ensured that in terms of protecting our space, let's talk about climate change adaptation and mitigation. In dealing with living together and building our society, we've talked about smart cities in our activities and conferences that have been held recently. And then lastly, on wealth creation, we've tackled the creativity and innovation of ensuring that we have sustainable institutions and activities. So a few milestones since we were created. One, in 2001, we were created, we started off with 9 academies. Just by a show of hands, who was there in 2001? Which academy? Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Cameroon. So we had 9, including the African Academy of Sciences, was not there. By 2004, we had the Asaki Initiative, which brought in U.S. National Academy of Sciences. In 2008, we had our first ever strategy. At that time, we had already, I think, 2008, that was 7 years on to our existence. By that time, how many academies were in existence? Our very first strategy. Good. So now we have new academies also on board. Then 2012 became a legal entity. Now this was critical because then it means NASA could do business as NASA. We became a legal framework for which we entered into contracts and engagements as an entity. So that was 2012. 2016, we delved into doing policy making, and a few articles that we've been able to do in terms of policy makers, nutrition, and agricultural topic, we've done scientific reports. We've also done publications on meetings, on Women and Science Forum, as well as panel discussions and advisory pieces for the network. Early career researchers to be able to do collaborative research, but also ensure that that research is transdisciplinary. The reason why we get involved with this program is the specific reason Emmanuel mentioned, that there's a need for mentorship, but it also needs scientists to work outside of their own silos and try to collaborate and do work. So we give grants to enable young researchers to do that. But it's also critical for NASA because we need to continuously feed the pipeline of new scientists coming on board and becoming members of sciences. Our peer engagement in conferences, workshops, to tackle pertinent issues has been critical because we have convening power to give platforms to enable researchers, policymakers to dialogue on issues that concerns them, booklets, as I've mentioned, but above all is the visibility and profiling, not just the network, but the scientists. We managed to do this from the time we were set up in 2001 to now by various partnerships, and they've been strategic in that they've tried to fulfill the mission and vision that have been highlighted in our strategic plan. What then have we learned? Out of the 7 years of this working, 3 things come to mind. One is that the strength of the network really heavily depends strength of each academy. And it is their collective contribution and their collective niche that enables the network to be able to do better, to serve them better, and also to profile itself as the voice of science academies in the continent. Lesson number 2. Yeah, I'm finishing in a minute. Lesson number 2 is that we constantly have had to overcome our continental barriers. Things that would otherwise tear us apart, the language, a geographical space, the mobility between countries, the resources that we constantly complain of lack and never having enough, the limited resources we have. But for us to work together, then we are able to boost each other and overcome those challenges in spite and against all odds. But then last and not least is the fact that each member support has been critical in networking us to be able to deliver on global goals and act locally. So I thank you very much.
I'd like to start with this very simple quote given by the second president of the US. It says, we cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. And in a sense, this helps to clearly capture the essence of what Young Academies are all about. Research in Africa, while accounting for 15% of the global population, Africa actually contributes less than 2% of world global research. And also, 1% of global investment in research is spent in Africa. However, we only have 0.1% of the world's patents coming out from the continent. And so, the amount or the ratio of patents gives the younger people to get involved in the concept of innovation, creative things, involving in developmental orientation. There's a whole lot of complications coming out from the continent. But like I said earlier, 0.1% of global patents come out from the continent. So the question is, are the papers not translatable into academics? Keep the connection with the senior academies, find ways to strengthen the engagement with bodies like the Inter-Academy Partnership, get involved and make it full policy formulations, be involved in the implementation of SDG goals, picking specific goals and acting on them, and also remain objective and uphold fairness in the admission of people into membership. In concluding, across Africa, from Cape to Cairo, from Mogadishu to Mauritania, it's time for young people to arise in Africa, and the Young Academies must create a platform for this realization. As we look forward to a continent that isn't starved with all the links, I believe Young Academies can come to the fore and give significant contribution. And there are increasing opportunities for us if we would look ahead and stop making excuses for known challenges of our continent. I'd like to end with this 2 quotes. Former president, one former president of an African country, Mauritius. The African government will join hands with strong and credible international partners to invest in local research. Without funding and the necessary regulatory environment and policies, the benefits of scientific results emanating from research work would be harvested. And it's time for a new generation of leadership to cope with new problems and new opportunities for the new world to be won. I'd like to acknowledge for everybody. Thank you all for listening.
Thinking differently than us, and then there are misunderstandings happen. So my suggestion is that what about instead of training us as the mentees, training the mentor on the first place to be a good mentors. Okay. Another thing that I will, there is an initiative, international initiative, it's called ENASP. It offers and free mentorship for the it's International Network for Availability of Scientific Cooperation for the People in the Developing Countries.
The Academy of Sciences. I have two questions, one for Jackie and one for Professor Annuelle. Jackie, I noted from your presentation that you are constantly reviewing your SWOT as NASA. I just wanted to get from you whether you have an idea how well the individual science academies will be constantly reviewing their strategic plans. And then Professor Annuelle, I think my question is is almost the same as the one that was asked about mentorship, considering having institutional arrangements to support mentorship. I just wanted to find out from you if you would share with us any examples of good mentorship programs that you may have and what you would recommend for science academies. Are we looking at very informal mentorship programs, or would you propose something that is very formal, and how science academies would go about facilitating this?
Way feedback on mentoring useful to assess the quality of the outcome of the mentoring? Because last year in Abuja we had some very interesting feedback, but that was from a survey or something. Very interesting, but very depressing.
That work in Africa. The quality of research. Remember, we're looking at research for development. By standards, you know, it's a bit of a difficult thing to say, oh, quality. The quality is good. I mean, we're not saying we're not doing good work at our level, what we have. But the issue is it translating into development? Is it helping the socio-economic lifestyle of our people? And that really is where I think the twist comes in. And so that's what we're talking about, having the developmental orientation. The same fellow scientists that have been produced, many papers have been written on in Africa, have been used in parts of Asia, parts of Europe, for very many marketable goods, have translated into actual production. And I think that's part of where we have a bit of a challenge. We do some work, it ends in a good paper and sits there. So I think the change in orientation for us is to try and see how we can do things that can hopefully end up in actual, tangible changes for our
digital academies. Directly, no. Indirectly, yes. Indirectly in this sense. When we have lead academies in different regions, so for instance, we have ASAF leading academic development in the SADC area, which is the Southern African area, then we are hopeful that in the course of their interaction, they get to do what we call peer learning. So one academy learns from the other one directly because they're at peer level, but then also the academies themselves, the senior academies, to mentor the younger academies. So in that way, when we get feedback, usually at our General Assembly or annual meetings, then you're able to either correct, give inputs to which were the missed opportunities or how to overcome certain threats. But it's in a very less structured, more informal interaction of one-on-one scientist to scientist. So directly, no, it is something that we'll have to give thought to, but indirectly, yes.
So first of all, is it necessary who initiates mentorship? The success of a mentoring program doesn't really or strongly depend on who initiates mentorship. It could be the potential mentor or the potential mentee, anyone to initiate it. But what is important is that they have the right chemistry. If both mentor and mentee have the right chemistry, things will work well. Because when they don't have the right chemistry, there is always mistrust, There's always local trust. There's always an issue. That's the truth. So what is important, I edited my slides a lot because of time. I had to remove several things. I wanted to show stages of mentorship and all that. There are stages. I mean, the first stage is to, first of all, you have to find out, are you going to be able to meet the need of the mentee that is coming to you or that you want to mentor? You need to find out, do you have the right chemistry? Can you work with this person? Do you have the time to also follow up with this mentee? So once you have considered all that, then you can then go ahead. And if you're sure that you can go ahead with this mentee, then maybe, then start off the relationship. Like I said, mentor-mentee is a relationship. It's a relationship and it needs to be, taken seriously. Then can we train mentors and potential mentors to enhance their efficiency? Well, I've been tinkering on this idea. Yes, it's possible. But again, of course, some of these trainings are online. For example, I know some bodies that have these trainings online. But I've also been thinking of bringing together some senior scientists and probably get their own views and also share views with them and also try to do some kind of training that will enhance their efficiency as mentors. Then I'm asked to propose a mentorship model. This is tough. I don't know how to propose that model because first you have to look at your environment. I mean, it depends on your environment. It depends on what's happening. I cannot say the model that is working for the Nigerian Young Academy and the Nigerian Academy of Science must be the model that the Benin Young Academy is going to follow, must be the model that South Africa Young Academy will follow. We all have our different environments, and I think we should look at our environment and find out what really works for us. But what is important is that we keep this relationship going and working. And it's important that in the course of mentoring, in the course of having this mentoring, I think the Nigerian Youth Academy does that every year. We submit a report back to the senior academy. This is how far we have fared.
This morning, Professor Mnavu from Kenya, he made an interesting comment when he was talking about speaker going, and she's Professor Suki Mwendwa, who was the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Technology, Innovation, and Partnership at Technical University, Kenya, and will be talking to us about applying a gender lens in achieving diversity in Africa's scientific manpower. By the way, just who are they? I'm reading what is on the program. It is manpower. Just to allay some of your anxiety, we don't have 4 speakers, we have 3. Our last speaker on indigenous knowledge policy was not able to make it because of the visa issue. So, Suki, please.
Good afternoon. This is a very hard time to speak because people are tired, sleepy. What I would usually do is I would do some dance movements to wake you up, but I haven't been given that time. So I'm going to do it today and you're lucky. I'm going to do that. If you notice, my topic I put applying gender lens in achieving diversity of Africa's scientific, and I put woman power. There was a contradiction in looking at gender and saying manpower, but you will begin to understand why I'm calling it manpower. So earlier this afternoon, in the morning, we had a number of people who were speaking about balance. So one of the things that we're looking at is balance. There was also a question of DNA, culture, environment, and means, and there was also the issue of resilience. How I'm going to look at gender may be slightly different than what you expect. And I think if we're looking at things from a scientific point of view and how science is really changing and transforming, I think as a designer, we do like to stretch the envelope and see how far we can take things, to see how we can diversify and create opportunities. One of the things I would like to, which I was asking myself when I looked at this, looking at it from a gender lens, was, first of all, as designers, we tend to question everything, especially when we're conceptualizing and then translating it into something tangible. And one of my questions was, does science have the vocabulary for the African experience? This before I even get into gender. And why did I ask that question? In a lot of, I can say for Kenya, a lot of our languages, when we translate senses, because we're going to do a lot of perception here, when we look at senses and translate directly from our different languages, we hear touch, we hear pain, we hear tastes. If you translate directly, it's a hearing experience, a listening experience. The only time you have a different sensory expectation is when you see. You project your thoughts or you manifest your soul. And what does that mean in terms of an aesthetic and how we can relate to the African experience? So there's a big question there. Does science today, which started from a philosophical base, Aristotle was there, and Aristotle went through the British line and they went into more of an inductive approach. And then the Europeans went more into a deductive approach. And so what approach are we taking? Because there is philosophy behind science. So what is our philosophy behind science? Do we have an agenda of saying we look at an area of philosophy behind science? So having said that, the other thing I wanted to sort of, when we're looking at the African experience, is to ask the question of the juxtapositions of cultures. And I'm going to go into more detail with that as I go along. So initially, since this one's not working, it is working. Okay, so yes, science matters, but science is a story and is always changing, and it's always changing of itself. But the question is, we talked about resilience. How do we explain a situation like the one we see over here? It is actually very vastly scientific. I think it's very innovative, and I think there's resilience. How much do we really understand of our own situation? With physicists are beginning to experience the same thing. Whereas this person talks about energy. And this is a convergence which I'll talk about as we go along. So, what have I done? I've looked at 3 aspects to relate to gender, and 3 levels. I know usually we relate to 1 level, but I say that I'm putting a case here that there's 3 levels. One which is very, one which we know, and there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of advocacy around it, and it's often the elephant in the room. I was making a joke earlier, have all the men run away, because I've seen a lot of women here. But anyway, that's besides the point. So the first one is visible, and it generally associates with unequal power and access to choices and resources between men and women. And there's been a lot of work done on this, and to some degree, I'm not going to put a large emphasis on this as I go along with my presentation, because I want to build up others which are not also visible. Number 2, which looks at gender culture. Here I'm putting a case that there's actually male and female cultural experiences and paradigms, and also I'm putting a feminine universe paradigm, and I'm going to put a case to that too. So I'm saying there's 3 levels, and that one is highly not touched at all. So let me move to the next. Okay, so when we're looking at gender, I want to bring up something here. Yes, it's often politicized. But which view are we looking at it from? I mean, if you look at this picture here, you see the 6 and 9. And one is saying I'm right, but it doesn't mean the other is wrong. They're just seeing it from a different position. And just to lighten up things a bit, I just want to give you a small, real quick joke, just to amplify this. Where there were some adult computer scientists who were trying to find out the gender of a computer. And after 10 minutes, the men decided that the computer is female because they said no one but the creator understands the internal logic. And then the other one was when computers speak between each other, they communicate in code that only they and the computers can understand. The third one was every mistake is stored on their hard drive for later retrieval. And as soon as you cannot, and the last one was as soon as you commit to one, you spend half of your salary maintaining and buying accessories. So this is why the men were saying the computer was female. But the females also had their say. They said it should be masculine. And they said, in order to get their attention, you have to turn them on. You have a lot of data, but still can't think for themselves. It's supposed to help you solve problems, but half the time they are the problem. And as soon as you commit to one, you realize if you had waited a little longer, you could have got a better model. Basically, I'm not putting it on a project. And basically, I'm talking about technology moving faster than we are able to adapt. And therefore, we need to be with each other to be able to handle that. But when we were in Sweden, it was very interesting. There was this Lego competition. And when we talked to the teachers, they said when they talked to the girls, well, first when they got into the project, the young men got into it, tore everything apart, and started experimenting. But when they got to the girls were not interested. And then...
Just a second. Can you read what is up there?
I'm reading over there.
They always can follow because this is Greek to them. Something needs to be done at the back.
I know you people think I'm talking Greek, but I'm telling you this is not my fault.
Serious technology. They put it on translation. They selected the translation thing. They selected it.
And here we're looking at agender culture. Here we're looking at how cultures can actually be engendered. And what you look at from the right, we're looking at digital representation, which is very much mechanical, very structured, linear. And the other one is much more of an organic representation. And when you look at the organic representation, I'm going to ask you to look in to see what do you see in that organic representation. And as I'm talking, I want you to keep on looking at it, and then I'll ask you what you see in that organic representation. So here we're looking at different cultural realities, and we're looking at how do we, if we can understand cultural philosophy and individual perception, we will be, and personal worldviews, we'll be able to actually change things. And why I'm putting that up there is our perceptions actually decide our interpretations. So what are you seeing in terms of that, that representation? If you look carefully, who is seeing an old woman? We have actually had this experience before. But a lot of our cultural setups are based on our perceptions. And they come from our socialization from the beginning and historically as culture develops. So, looking at that from that way, I'm going a little further to go a little more detailed in terms of what is the cyclical and continuous, it's more of a cyclical interactive approach. Polychronic means to be able to do more than one activity at a time, which I'm sure for women it may be called multitasking. And each time you have a meeting, you have to have it complete. And that's why we have sort of African time and European time. In terms of communication, I'll use communication. Mainly relates to conformity, but also communication has something what we call a high context, low context. And if you just to put it simply, high context is like a marriage which you've had for the last 60 years and you don't have to speak to each other. You just understand from the gestures. Low context would say an early marriage. You have to really be explicit and say what is happening because you haven't developed enough information between you. So my question comes here. What happens when you juxtapose one on the other? You get a situation which I would say is like an elderly person who has lost a spouse and has married a young person who doesn't have the context. So you're going to have a lot of confusion there and misunderstandings because you need to develop that situation. And in many ways, African countries are dealing with that. I would like to also put a little footnote here. I've looked at the extremities, but cultural representation and juxtaposition is relative. It depends. But in many ways, you'll find that the African context and how they relate culturally is more to the left side, and the modern Western is more to the right side. And how they actually juxtaposed will actually decide the level of difference and confusion of what we're dealing with. So it's not about DNA, it's actually about cultural orientations and perceptions. So what happens when we put them together? The circular and the linear, you get a spiral, which is a new opportunity, a new way to look at things. And to be aware that you have these two systems that are happening and how are they showing themselves out. And just to give some examples of when we're looking at the two together, it's interesting that Engels was looking at African origins of mathematics, and he was seeing it in the African village as fractals and holographs. And what I find is very interesting is that this is a person from outside who's doing research on what we are about. We need to be looking at our information to be able to bring our philosophies and our directions in science. Vibrational medicine is also a very interesting one. Both people in the field are looking at saying, if you do not include the existence of people in medicine, then you've lost the plot. And basically they're saying the spiritual element. Where is the spiritual element in all of this? And again, I'll come back to what Professor Bernardo was saying when we're looking at indigenous technologies, and I think somebody else was talking about indigenous knowledge. There is a need for us to look inward and not always outwards. And just for a light note again, Lupita Nyong'o looked at her DNA, and it was very interesting what they found. Her DNA line went before race. It was closest to the earliest day. What does that say? It says that we have come from a situation before race, before difference. So, so society is adopting a new worldview, but yet we're using the same metaphor. So if we're going to go by Einstein, we're basically saying sanity is doing the same thing and hoping for something different. So we really need to look at the way of doing things different. And here I'm looking at difference from now a more universal point of view. Lately, science is actually acknowledging the quantum area, the deeper levels of physics, which have changed the paradigm from seeing is believing, which is very material, to believing is seeing. So what we saw yesterday in the dance, which were we looking at? Well, seeing is believing. We're saying, no, some will say, let's find out what that was. And if we're saying believing is seeing, it could have actually been, and I say it was magic. So here we're talking about, we create a new story of who we are and what we are. And I'm just referring to this this diagram is saying that you can look at the past and the present and the future in various worlds. We have a dream. What is our dream? What is our philosophy? What's our base? This is the third layer of gender that I'm looking at, because we're hitting now what I call a female circle, where we're now going inwards and not outwards. If you look at science now and look at the universe, it has been expanding and now it is actually contracting. So how do we go internally and look at the past, the present, the future, and create a new story? This is what we have been missing. We've been missing a philosophy, and we're needing to look at how do we create a new story, because science is giving us that opportunity with this new paradigm that is kicking in, which is called quantum mechanics, which allows for you to believe you can create. We don't have to see to believe. We can believe to see. And that's what we need to look at. So finally, I just want to say, may our philosophies keep pace with our technologies, may our compassion keep pace with our powers, and may love, not fear, be the engine of change. Thank you.
Your questions or comments until the three speakers are
I'm going to talk about women and sustainable development. I'm going to talk about what we mean by, we have heard a lot about sustainable development this morning, and extreme weather events, food crisis, and profound social instability. What is interesting is to see that all these five are all interconnected. So when we talk about food crisis or water crisis, it is I don't know what's happening with this screen. Can we have the presentation on the window? So, I mean, can you look at the screens on the side? There's always a problem with the one in the center part. So that the global risks are all interconnected also at the ecological footprint of Africa. We are talking about resilience this morning, but it's clear that, I mean, now, I mean, there is an overshoot. I mean, we are exceeding the biocapacity of the continent. So when you look at the water and land resource, the battery of this computer is low. Can we the resources of the continent already? So we are using more resources than the continent can bring. So what are the threats to sustainability? One of the first threats is the globalization. It's also the water sustainability. Pollution of the land, of the water resources will be surface of groundwater and also of the land resources. But also we have problems of the water, energy, and food insecurity, and all are linked. Population growth, of course, and all this is being exacerbated by climate change. So, I mean, there are several steps to South Africa's sustainability economic development, and we need to pay attention to these different threats. So the question then, I mean, we know that the importance of the water, food, and energy nexus, but also of sanitation, and I added on purpose sanitation, because it's a very important topic at which we are not paying enough attention, only $1 per day. And 33% of the population is undernourished in Sub-Saharan Africa, with a constant low average calorie intake per person, about 2,000 kilocalories per person per day. It is one of the world's most rapid rate of urbanization, with about 4% per year. I mean, the urban population was about 44 million in 1965, and it will be about 500 million in 2020. And it is also the biggest slum population, with 210 million, 60% of the urban population. At the same time, I mean, we have, all the basic needs are not satisfied, like basic sanitation. About 700 million people don't have access to basic sanitation. About 320 million don't have access to safe drinking water. The problem of waste management, solid waste management. And often it's less than 10% of the urban population that is connected to a sewerage system, and only 1% of the wastewater that is being treated. And this is an important topic when we talk about sanitation, because we focus very much on sewers on the continent. But I mean, it's clear that we have to go for on-site sanitation. At the same time, and this was also mentioned today, that there is a lack of energy or unreliable power supply system. We are experiencing here a number of power cuts during the day, and this is something that is quite important, that this is going to affect the kind of technologies we have to rely on. And about 42% of the total population is only 42% that has access to the total population, to the electricity. So you see all these challenges. When we talk about sustainable development, we have to address all these challenges. But also very high rate of infant mortality, of malaria, of diarrhea, HIV/AIDS, child malnutrition. So and high cost of land degradation, 10% of the GDP. So the question then is, how can women sustain Africa? And we know women is 50% of the population, but they are involved in a number of activities on the continent. So how can women sustain Africa? So when we talk about, the SDGs, so there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 17 objectives, 169 targets, and the gender SDG 5 is about gender equality. But all of them are interrelated, and you can put any one of them at the center, and you can see all the different connections between the different SDGs. So the question is how to make the SDGs central framework of development, and how we can address the question of gender equality. So there was was work done by the African Development about gender equality and the Gender Equality Index. This matters from 2015. They were looking at differences between men and women, measures across economic opportunity, human development, law, and institutions. And you can see that there are quite a number of countries that are far, it is on a scale from 0 to 100. And here you have just the 10 first countries that are doing not too bad on gender equality, but there are quite a number of challenges on the continent. So we know African women are involved in a number of activities. I'm going just to browse through different ones.
There are all these activities that are unpaid and not recognized. Women working, taking care of the kids, doing all the cooking. It's not only washing and so on, and not only the women, again, it's the girls that are involved. So this is also a large part of the time that is being devoted to such activities. Women as producers, again, businesses in the informal sector. So we find them, here there are pictures taken, for example, the two on the top in Ouagadougou on the solid waste management site where they are, sorting out all the green waste in order to produce compost, or all the plastics, making different kinds of things out of the different kinds of plastic that are just recovered. People bring them to the solid waste management site and they take care of this. But also in the market, like this market queen. So they are again engaging in low value added activity that with marginal returns. And only 15% of formal sector firms have a woman as a managing director. So we have to recognize that businesses operated by women are a key source of income for many poorer households and could be a driver of inclusive growth. And women can drive growth, but they face many hurdles: a lack of basic skills, a lack of access to financial services, and the challenges of balancing businesses and domestic obligations. Again, another problem is access to credit, and the lack of finance is the biggest constraint on business expansion. So women are more involved in families they invest more in families when they have direct access to financial services. It means a greater investment in nutrition, education, building human capital while making households more resilient to shocks and uncertainties. So the access to financial services is held back by legal obstacles, cultural assumption, and common banking practices. Again, another problem is access to, the infrastructure. And this is affecting the access to power and water. And we know how many hours women are spending fetching water and firewood and other biomass. So 15 to 17 hours per week, and about 10 kilometers per week again, just to fetch water or firewood. And again, it is the small girls and the women, and not only doing different tasks, as you were saying, multitasks, carrying the child and the water and the firewood all at the same time. So economic empowerment requires dealing with women's time poverty, and lack of access to information and communication technology is also a problem. So you see problem of access to land, access to credit, access to infrastructure. So there is an array of unfair barriers that prevent women from playing their economic roles to their full potential, and these are constraints on Africa's achieving its development potential. So if we don't recognize it and we don't create a different environment, the development of the continent is being, there will be, constraints on the development of the continent. There are also inequalities between men and women. They are among the greatest in the world. Women achieve, African women, only 87% of the human development outcomes of men. African women and girls are among the world's poorest and with the highest rates of illiteracy. And there are still quite significant barriers in entering both primary and secondary schools. The gender gap costs sub-Saharan Africa US $95 billion a year. Are very powerful and can make a change in order to address this question of gender equality in fields, and I would like to see them also.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. Our third and last presentation is by Charles this morning.
I'm here to tell us how to use science and tap on our comparative advantage and then use that to better our society. So thank you. I want to start with this slide to say many times we think that knowledge started from outside, and we're always excited sometimes as Africans to take knowledge that is imported into our country, rather than the one that we're going to export outside. And that's part of the discussion that we had today during the keynote lecture, what the keynote lecturer described as this activities model. But we must put it on record that we have technology put up of our own knowledge system before we invaded it. Invaded should be quote unquote. Africa had indigenous technology that was actually very, very well accepted, and it was serving our system, was serving our nation, serving our people at that time. And so this is the background of what I want to say in this presentation. We had our own ways of doing things before the coming of the colonials. But the history written from the other side of the ocean wants us to believe that we imported technology, but no. And I think it was in now also thought this morning, that's the knowledge that is well known, that knowledge actually started from Africa. Pockets of persons who dispersed to other parts of the world actually expanded and made use of their own environment better than we did. And now they're trying to export knowledge back to us, so we must know. So that's part of what I want to do. Then look at the book written by Professor Clapperton Mabunga, finally trouble to relate. And in his book, he gave several instances, but one very interesting one is where he said that before the British possibly colonized Zimbabwe, the Zimbabweans had an indigenous technology of how to get themselves free from tsetse-fly. And that when they were doing tsetse-fly, traditionally would settle in low areas, low altitude areas. And at that time in Zimbabwe, they wanted to farm, they were farming at very high altitudes. And by so doing, they were not infested by tsetse-fly. When the British came, they were trying to force them to go to those low altitudes where the tsetse-fly has comparative advantage, and it dealt with them, a lot of them actually. And they have to go back to understand how these persons have been living in this region for so long, but yet they are not infected by tsetse-fly. And this technology is what is changing about how to restructure environment, how to reduce population in certain areas in order to avoid infection by the fly. So they went back to the indigenous technology and they were able to overcome the issue of trypanosomiasis. And what another story that this professor outlined in his book, Professor of MIT. So briefly, where were we before? Before now, in terms of African traditional knowledge system. Before now, we had this technology of rainmaking. And this is still working. In my place now, in many places, before you organize weddings or any very big event, they will actually go and consult the rainmakers. I don't know whether that is some parts of Africa here. They say you have to go and consult rainmakers. The truth is there is a science behind rainmaking. It's not just about, it's not voodoo. Like what we saw yesterday, I was angry with a colleague. Yesterday, that was not voodoo, that was not science, but African traditional knowledge system. We need to study and find out what they did. The same thing applies to rainmaking. Those in climatology will tell you that there are certain herbs that if you disperse when the components, volatile oils, go up in the atmosphere, they disperse certain layers, and they can cause rain to come down, and vice versa. It's just science, and that we as scientists we need to study. has nothing to do with rituals or things like we make it seem, look like. What about weapons, family implements? We know that metal works of traditional African origin, were very, very effective in those days where they were fighting different kinds of wars. And as a matter of fact, the technology for making weapons that we see today in Europe and other parts of the world were actually stolen from Africa, from our indigenous technology. And they fabricate these and send them back to us and so on. But these are technologies that are very genuine, very natural, that we need to understand. What about the ancient Egypt? They used the papyrus. Papyrus was just a reed, but the papyrus they able to sail through the Atlantic, sail through different seas. And that technology is still available today. That's the picture I was trying to show there. How they could use that for that. Egyptian mathematicians, we know, they contributed to the development of the science of maths. And these are all things that we need to understand. My university is located in this town called Oka. And Oka is in Anambra State. The people from this region, they are known for, they are very good blacksmiths. As a matter of fact, part of their traditional yearly ritual is to demonstrate the art of blacksmith. And they are very good. As a matter of fact, during the war, the Nigerian-Biafran War, part of what we describe today as Bunigwe. Bunigwe was a local kind of bazooka that was developed by these persons. And very good up to tomorrow, they use it, lots of it. Recently, not too long ago, the security situation in some parts of the state, they started seeing that some of the youths are going back to using these indigenous technologies to make weapons, guns that they used to commit robbery in some other parts. It's a disadvantage, but then those are things that can be harnessed. And it's a technology that is well protected, well preserved. Sometime last year, somebody came from University of Oxford. He was a historian, he's an archaeologist and historian. He came to our university, he was writing a book. He said the great-grandfather, who was actually a historian, was trying to study part of what they did in the ancient Oka kingdoms. And he even brought part of the manuscript that the father left. And he was only trying to complete what the father did to document, the art of blacksmith in that region of Oka and what they were able to achieve. And that was around 1720, he was saying so. The great-grandfather. Something that they did, they passed on that knowledge from one generation to another generation. But this is lying with us. And as a matter of fact, our university started as a University of Science and Technology to capitalize on the gains of this indigenous technology of Oka, to use iron steel and in terms of blacksmith. Bush following and agriculture, we know that it's a technology that we're using just to enhance productivity. You plant, after some time you shift to another place and leave the particular soil to grow again and produce nutrients. We're not using, chemicals and fertilizers, based on chemicals that will pollute our land, pollute water. Bush following was what we're using, and it was very effective. It served us very well. The same thing with crop rotation. And then we know the traditional medical practitioners. This is a technology that we know tomorrow is very useful. Although it's fraught with lots of superstitions, and which is the downside of it. But as I said, what scientists can do, what scientists have to do is to utilize this indigenous knowledge for the purpose of science. I remember, and part of giving this talk elsewhere, where we were able to show the benefits of African traditional medicines. And I remember I told the story, and it's something that happened in the university I was before. A group of scientists, from that university, the University of Nigeria, Suka, they, through collaboration with some traditional medical practitioners, they found out that there was a particular herb that was very, very effective in curing mental diseases, mental ailments, those who were trying to run mad. And when they went to this traditional medical practitioner and to ask in their corporation to find out what was the secret, the man told them, to cure that, you need to go to the bush by 12 midnight, you must go there by 12 midnight. Not only that, but you must go naked. If you want to collect those plants, you must be naked. Of course, the scientists didn't believe that. They went to the bush. They didn't go at the first. They didn't go by 12 midnight. They said that makes no sense. They collected the plants in the midday normally, and the plan didn't work. It was not effective. So they went back to the traditional healer. I said, I told you, you must go at 12 midnight. You must go naked. So the next step, they went there 12 midnight to collect, but they didn't go naked. At 12 midnight, they collected. The people were not naked. And they came back, and they did what? So in the course of what they call structural elucidation and the activity-guided fractionation, they found out that the active component of that plant was a volatile oil. And volatile oil, as you know, if you collect during the day, volatile oil will have reduced bioaccumulation. But if you collect in the night or when the weather is cold, there's bioaccumulation and then the thing is effective. So they didn't need to go at 12 midnight. They didn't need to go naked, but they needed to go at the time, maybe 6 a.m. in the morning or early in the morning when the sun was not up, and then collect that plant. That is the importance of science, empirical evidence. And that plant is being used very effectively. So lots of these traditional remedies are, shrouded in such secrecy. A lot of them, they tell you what you need to do. We had an experience a couple of years back where some traditional medical practitioners in one town also in the southeastern part of Nigeria, they had this remedy that they said was effective against HIV. And we carried this plant and we checked it was not effective against HIV. Empirical test against the virus was not effective. But then we discovered that same plant had immunomodulatory properties. It could enhance and help the immune system. And so it was not directly antiviral, but it was immune enhancing. These are things that science can prove, collaboration with scientists can do, and a lot of such things. So if you look at traditional medicine, also they tell you they are speaking to the gods, they say certain things, but all those are things that they use to garnish the actual function, the actual function of the plant. So for us as scientists, what we need to do is to look at the science behind whatever practice that they are projecting. And that, to me, is what I describe as a role. So I want to talk about harnessing our role, harnessing our traditional African knowledge system, and how that works. Well, I've talked about the Oka blacksmith. They came with Ogunigwe, which was used during the war. This was a kind of local bazooka, very effective. It was destroying different, they can target where they want this thing to go and to go. And that knowledge is yet untapped. The challenge for us to tap this knowledge and use it was a kind of flying Ogunigwe. At that time, people used to say that the witch doctors used to sell it to target. But it was just this simple technology that they were using. And it's still very, very, very relevant for today. So we need collaboration in order to understand how this works and how we can harness that for our own indigenous technology. In terms of medicine, the Mayor Baker currently has they have the patent right to produce this product they call nigrosan. Nigrosan is a medicine that was discovered through collaboration with the NIBRIC. NIBRIC is a research institute, pharmaceutical institute in Nigeria. Through research, through collaboration with some traditional practitioners, NIBRIC was able to isolate the active ingredient that is used in this nigrosan against sickle cell. This particular product, you can see some of the empirical data showing us the effect of this nigrosan against sickle cell. You can see when there is no drug, the crisis increases to about 60%, with nigrosan to about 20%. The same thing payment resource reduces when you have 9%, but up to 100%. And the same thing with the absence from school in terms of the effect of sickle crisis. But 9%, as I said, was through collaboration. Collaboration between this school industry, this school research institute, and some local traditional medicinal practitioners. And they were able to sell the idea, and the patent rights were well formulated, and the royalties going to the families. And a lot of such collaborations exist in the area of medicine. So many are coming up now in my country that the traditional rulers are coming to tell us what they do. Recently we have someone who is showing us there's a product that's very effective against HIV. And it's showing that we can collaborate to develop that. We've done some clinical trials, pilot clinical trials, and it's effective. So now we're trying to talk with the person on the way forward. But these things are there. Of course, there are also cases of Zobo drink. Zobo drink is from hibiscus sativa, which is explored for as a weight loss supplement. And companies are taking this up also. So there are issues with the traditional African knowledge system, as I've mentioned before, that everything is shrouded in superstition. And when they want to tell you about what to do, they first of all tell you some incantations that you make in order to get that thing work. It's a very common practice in every traditional knowledge system. One of my uncles is a traditional, and he will tell you, there's a particular head, he will tell you that you need to speak with it. You don't need to face the head. You know, you turn your back and speak to it, and then you walk. And I tell, why do I turn my back? He said, turn your back to show that the head is superior to you. Can't look at it face to face. I said, no, I'm superior to that head because I can direct it what to do. And again, if you don't, the first thing some of them do, we need to understand this psychology. They will tell you, if you're not able to obey the rules, the superstitions surrounding this, then we cannot discuss. So sometimes, in order to get them, in order to get their confidentiality, you may just comply. When they say move your leg, remove your shoe. When they say buy, because you want to get knowledge. Otherwise, they won't talk, they won't divulge information. That's the experience that we've had with some of this. So a lot of superstition.
Could you complete in a minute and a half?
Okay, a minute. Again, it's not standardized, so this have those of this drug or take one. I mean, these are not standardized. So one of the things we've been doing is trying to standardize their formulations and make this in the next 1 minute. The first important lesson is that we must collaborate with these practitioners. Do not just tell them, oh, this is good, oh, this is that. There must be collaboration if we are going to benefit from the knowledge. Number two, there's need for understanding the practitioners. And how to do that, you must create the environment to understand them. I said before that sometimes they ask you to bow down, you ask you to lie down, to turn your back. You just have to do such that you can understand them. And investigate the line science, you're scientists, you need to investigate like that of the drug against dental disease. We need to standardize the process. We need to incorporate this into our curriculum. This is very important. This is one of the problems that is affecting the development of this system. It's not in our curriculum. Our kids, our children don't believe that there's anything good in our African traditional knowledge system. We need to build it into our curriculum so that they'll, as a general studies or anything like that, but it must find its way into our curriculum. Then, our curriculum, it will form the bedrock of our education. I think I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
My comment is that you mentioned the role of women and you are applying the gender lenses in the development process, but you didn't mention the status of women inside the science, especially in the STEM fields. We know that about just 11% of the students that are studying engineering in Africa are girls. Just 3% is studying agriculture. And the story has become worse when we are coming to the sector, the work. All of the girls or all of the women are in the line in the low ranks. There are not a lot of professors, associate professor, head of departments. So I think it's one of our issues to solve this problem so that we can ensure the participation of the women in making the decision or making the development correctly.
Ma première intervention s'adresse à ma collègue kenyane qui a parlé du genre. Je remercie d'abord ma collègue d'avoir levé un point du voile dans la mesure où quand on parle de genre, on a tendance à réduire le genre à la femme. Alors que le genre se veut un outil d'analyse dont l'objectif, la finalité, c'est d'équiter la justice sociale. Par exemple, les êtres humains ne sont pas affectés de la même manière quand il s'agit justement d'un phénomène social, d'une catastrophe. Par exemple, prenons l'exemple justement des changements climatiques. Les hommes et les femmes ne sont pas affectés de la même manière, mais également les pêcheurs et les agriculteurs ne sont pas affectés de la même manière. De ce point de vue, l'approche genre voudrait qu'on prenne en compte justement toutes ces catégories. Donc l'approche genre se veut une approche holistique qui prend en compte les différentes catégories sociales. Ma deuxième question s'adresse à mon collègue du Nigeria par rapport aux savoirs locaux. Comment créer une osmose entre les savoirs locaux et les savoirs qui sont institutionnalisés? Apparemment, il y a un dialogue de sourds et chacun justement se confine dans son endroit tout en revendiquant une certaine légitimité. Et de ce point de vue, je pense que l'on gagnerait à créer justement des boulevards pour échanger entre les différentes formes de connaissances. Merci.
Directed to Suki and Professor Barry. This is a question that comes up a lot in most of these women forums, and I just wanted to get a comment from you regarding work-life balance for women. Is it something that is achievable? I know that is something that that will differ with different individuals, but I just wanted to get a comment from you from your experience, whether this is something that is achievable. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is directed towards Professor Testimone. Don't you think African governments have a critical role to play in the realization of those lessons for African scientists that you referred to? Thank you.
Traditional knowledge expert. You indicated that the drug that was developed, nitricum, whatever it is, that the royalty seems to be going somewhere. I would like to find out, how does the community, the owner of the indigenous or traditional knowledge, how does it benefit from these royalties?
I'm just want to comment about Ms. Bakari, about women's sustainable development. And I wondered, she didn't cover indigenous knowledge of women at rural areas or at village standards, because there is a lot of indigenous knowledge being innovated by these women, especially in food preservation, even discovering some sort of substances that can be added to food to make food more tender, or extracting from the intestine of animals, ready for food, for milk or formulation. So there is a lot of indigenous women knowledge at rural areas. About indigenous knowledge patency, because these people, they come to these what you call medicinal healers, and they just they make use of their knowledge and they go to the lab and make a lot of development without and publishing papers without acknowledging these people's knowledge. There is what is called a Nagoya protocol, which protect healer or medicinal healers copyright in discovering such knowledge. You see. This is my question.
Thank you.
Status of women, and one thing I would say is, as I mentioned, the language we speak in terms of education and how we look at the sciences or anything else has a difference in terms of, does it have meaning or is it just an expectation? And one of the things we haven't looked at is what language are we using when we're educating? Is it actually encouraging young ladies to go for sciences and other subjects? The other thing is to demystify it. We were looking at a case of engineering in the university I was at, and we found that women are looking at mechanical engineering as a dirty thing. But right now you have mechatronics and everything else, and it's actually quite keen. So just that knowledge of the difference of how technology has changed and has changed the profession would help to give some direction to that. Work-life balance for a woman, that is a continuous thing that you're always working on, and my advice there is, what I had presented was understanding the cultural consequences and male-female relationships and all those things, because you find yourself having to go through those thinkings as certain activities and discussions take place. Men relate to men differently, so sometimes when you're in their environment and they're treating you the same way, it is how they treat each other. And one has to know that is what is different. But it's also knowing when you say what you say, when you want to say it, and how you want to put it. So I would actually call it a management of information and communication and actually understanding it. And basically what I was presenting there is those various mechanisms that are used for that. But I would like to just make one comment in terms of indigenous knowledge, please, Mr. Chair, because I know we talked about witchcraft or whatever, but I'm actually saying that, and I was giving the idea of quantum physics because I didn't have time to go more into it, but it's a new paradigm that's hitting science. And it's really basically saying the observer affects the observed. In that quantum thinking, it could have the language to explain what we have been doing in our traditional ways, in the rituals, about the electromagnetic field that also participates. So it's actually a science. And I'm just going to give my own personal example really quickly. A couple of years ago, I had a misfortunate situation. Basically, I was given there was only one medication that could actually help me heal, and I was allergic to it. And I used something called bioresonance, which is really basically quantum physics put into a box, and the Germans have put that together. But it uses a dowser, and if you look at it, it looks like magic. And then they put this little tube, which they just put salt water, and it actually calibrates whatever my situation is in that salt water. But I actually was able to manage the situation, and I got healed quicker than was expected by the doctors. So I'm saying there is situations we may not be able to explain, but with quantum physics now and quantum mechanics, it may explain a whole other dimension, which can also explain what has been happening in our traditional circumstances and connect indigenous knowledge with science.
You cover the participation of women, action. I wanted to show what was, where we found most of the women working co-activities like in agriculture, in low-paid activities and so on. But it's true that things are changing. And this is what in the second part of my presentation, I was showing the number. And women working in different kind of jobs that usually didn't find even what we can call kind of dirty jobs and so on, looking at pit latrines, solid waste, all the waste that we can recover and so on. And so things are really changing. It's clear that the landscape is completely changing, and women are now, I don't think there is any field. This is why I took also the example of the president of Ethiopia, because there is no, we are always women in politics, but it is something that is going to be, we will see, the 21st century, the century of women. We like it all. This is clear, so we'll see much more. And I would like to say, for example, I'm from Tunisia, and I'm teaching, I'm counting at the School of Agriculture Engineers. I'm counting the number of, women in the classrooms is dominant. There are 2 or 3, and it is, in rural engineering, it's a branch where usually was mainly men, and now it is dominated by female. Same at the School of Engineers. So it is something that is, I'm asking even men, it was a company saying, how are you dealing with this? And so they said that they have mainly, women can come first, on the top, So they said they have now doing 2 kinds when they are recruiting. They have 2 lists, one for men and one for women. And men come at the bottom of the women list still, from the top. So from the point of view of education, women are doing much better. From the point of view of work-life balance, this is an issue, and it is an issue all over the world. So it's still a question of, things have changed. They have changed quite a lot. I can say, I can see from, my mother and me and so on how, because there is much more sharing of different activities at home and so on, but it is still, we are still not there, but we will come there. So I'm very hopeful that it is going to change. And so it is achievable. Maybe in 10, 20 years, things are going to change dramatically. And yeah, I didn't cover the indigenous knowledge, but there is so much, and I think I was running short of time. Oh, thank you.
On the indigenous knowledge system, that is quite true. But then I see that as something that is very positive, and because as we're evolving, it's good for us to evolve with what the innate advantage that we have, and we can transform that. China, for instance, they produce the plant, this medicine that is called penicillin, was developed more than 1,000 years ago from the traditional Chinese medicine that is called greenhouse, and transformed that now with knowledge to something that is very, very, very productive, giving them a lot of financial stress. And in terms of who creates that, how that is created, what kind of knowledge exchange is, the second person question actually, which was like a comment, answers that the government has a critical role to play. In my country, the government has created some of these research institutes, the Institute for Traditional Medicine Research. There's also this pharmaceutical research that goes about to create the environment for indigenous persons to bring their knowledge and actually educate them on how they can share whatever proceeds out of that. In terms of benefit, the community, in fact, in the case of my reason, the community did not benefit directly. Those that benefited were, the traditional practitioners that actually brought the medicine. But with this kind of experience, they are trying to work out things that will also make not just the particular medical practitioner to benefit, but communities from where these plants are grown, harvested, or brought. So that is being worked out in many of the things that were, many of the patent rights that are coming up now. And just to add one last thing about the indigenous knowledge, copyright. Copyright is a very important aspect, and we know that. But that's the first thing that we try to assure the traditional medical personnel that whatever you bring is the copyright is yours, and we're going to protect that, and it's signed an agreement that is legal, that is binding. So it's one of the first things that are actually done. Thank you.
Join me, please, in thanking our speakers for giving us a wonderful. We do apologize for going a little over time, but as we said, we started 1 hour late. We've recovered at least 30 minutes from that loss.
I have an interesting panelists here who will get us into this. And clearly, it means that infusing science to foster collaborations, that's the key in terms of definitions. But people will start talking about science in diplomacy. They talk about science for diplomacy. We talk about diplomacy for science. But again, we won't get too academic this afternoon. And there are no PowerPoints, by the way. I'm never around about the military was spending 70% of his time developing PowerPoint presentations, the US military. So, no PowerPoints this afternoon. But my panelists are fantastic and able to do a good job with that. Mr. Ejimo, who is a Knight Fellow in Science Journalism from the MIT, Bell Fellow, or was a Knight Fellow. Is it was or is? Always is. Absolutely. Okay, always a fellow. So, Bell Fellow in Population and Development Studies from Harvard or at Harvard. Currently is a program director at DEFCON's Communications. Basically, he's a science journalist. Okay, almost good pronunciation. Fungwa actually works in South Africa. She's from Zimbabwe. She is in charge of strategic partnerships at the Conversation Africa, which is an interesting institution. The Conversation Africa is trying to get scientists to do journalism. Write your stories, write your research for popular reading. And they would work with you as editors to get those stories out. They have a great platform online that is well read. How many people have ever received mails and all that from the Conversation Africa? Or from the Conversation at all? Anyway, Africa, Australia, UK, Conversation. Yes, you get the hands up. So that is happy now. Two master's degrees, I won't get into that. I have Stanley also beyond there. Stanley understands science diplomacy, or should I say practices science diplomacy, as the international liaison manager at the Academy in South Africa. I need to say that in full, is it? Because there are other academies. Yes. So Academy of Science of South Africa. Almost there. Okay, good. And he's a member of the International Network for Government Science Advice. Used to work with World Vision. But Stanley understands the fact that you can use science to cross borders and all of that. And we have here Professor Isabella Wachi, fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, and Professor of Immunology and Parasitology, Foundation Dean, College of Health Sciences, University of Ghana. Now please give them all a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's nice to be here. Okay. Yeah, it's nice to be here. A long time ago, I used to be in the lab. And the time came that there were no animals in the animal lab. That time I was using cats. I started with dogs for cardiovascular physiology. And then cats, I couldn't get dogs anymore. I used to travel across the ocean and use that entrapment from Egypt to cross River Ogun to get dogs. I got the dog to the lab, and Professor Shofola said, administer Pluralus Ruretin, put more. And at the point he said, Mr. Jimo, your dog has packed up. I went away from the lab for like 3 weeks, then came back. Finished the first degree, did the second degree, started a PhD, and I realized that, look, I can't be going to the market to buy animals to do my experiments. So I went into journalism. And the main thing is, along the line, you realize that most of the research that have been done by colleagues were gathering dusts on the shelf in the head of department's office. And you realize that doing research or doing science for what? Is everything that you do going to end up on the shelf? And along the line, you realize that there's more. Because anything you do that has no relevance to the society, you have to rethink. And I can remember those days we used to go and, where they are having some worshiping the God of thunder, the God of iron. I used to report all those things as a health reporter. But along the line, the concept was done that, look, let's expand from just health and do science, the whole gamut of science. Agriculture, in 1990, the first Gulf War. There are a number of stories. People are worried about chemical weapons. They had nobody to write any story who understands chemical weapon or nuclear weapon within the newsroom. Those are the things that science, from my perspective, brought in. And quite a number of people were developed along the line. And networks were made. The MIT Fellowship linked me and a number of other people from other countries together to look at science as science and working with other people who have interest in making society understand the gamut of science. And that is where the aspect of, when we talk about diplomacy, when we talk about science, when we talk about diplomacy, we look at it in terms of international relations, linking up, diplomats, and so on and so forth. But when Ebola came, we all realized that we need to do something. I worked in polio for 4 years. And the places we were going to, you see the poorest of the poor, who could be helped by some of the presentation we had, today, in different parts of Nigeria. And you realize that how do they understand what the issues are? If they understand, how do they imbibe it in them? So it's one thing for us to look at the diplomacy in terms of we don't have the essence of what it takes in a part of the country or in a region. But are there knowledge elsewhere that people can bring in to help us address some of these issues? Polio is one of them. We've been able to address polio outbreak to a large extent in Nigeria, for example. The other thing we also need to look at is, when we talk about science, we're talking about knowledge, research, development, and so on and so forth. So to a large extent, there's an interlinkage between diplomacy and science in itself. I've seen situations whereby it's just one scientist who is known is one that attracts funding into an institution. And all those things are things that we can see elsewhere. But are we seeing them here? In this part of the world?
Allow me to stop here at the moment. Actually, to press pause. So you are not stopped, you will still say something.
Okay.
Especially about the communication side and the need for scientists to be able to communicate in order to foster that diplomacy. But I'll also still come to you in that communication. But now I'm interested in hearing Professor Wachi. Because he's talking about linking, how the knowledge needs to go across borders. So maybe you have a few thoughts in that regard.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm sure you're wondering what an immunologist, parasitologist is doing here in science diplomacy. And in fact, when I was asked to join these communicators and journalists, I thought, what is Jackie thinking about? But
you're right, it's Jackie. He does this all the time.
but clearly, I think all of us are not aware that our daily lives are negotiating diplomacy. You take all of us as researchers. When I came home the first time with my first degree, there was so little resources that if you had a pipette, you hid it. Because if someone used them brutally, it was $500 and you couldn't buy a pipette. So you needed to diplomatically work your way into collaborations. So in being with this group, I realized that my entire life has been one of science diplomacy. And so this is what I'll share with you. because as a young immunologist, I came home and we had, if you remember Ghana, we had Rawlings chain. I mean, things were so bad that we were, we go to meetings and we come with soap and matches. So there was a project, a malaria vaccine was literally staring us in the face. They cloned in mice, and they felt they could clone it malaria parasite antigens in humans. So the group at NIH and New York University wanted an immunologist parasitologist to join the group. So my supervisor at the London School, Alistair Bollard, had me interviewed. And I was flown to, so I was taken out of this poverty of Rawlings chain into NIH. And I got there and I called myself a quadruple minority. One, I was black, female, I mean, they didn't know whether I was a technician or what. But, I had to work my way. By the time I realized that half the people hadn't traveled, I had more travel than half of the scientists I was working there. So through scientific diplomacy, I worked my way through vaccine development. I made partnerships, friends from Australia. Our group was an international group. And then I was able to come back home. So 10 years at Georgetown, 10 years at Georgetown, 10 years at NIH, 10 years at Georgetown University. Through ICIDA grant, then I got employed to come to the University of Ghana to help raise a School of Public Health. A School of Public Health, I thought, there was nothing, no research funds. But then a group came from Johns Hopkins, wanted a reproductive health department built within the School of Public Health. I managed to convince them that malaria impacted on reproductive health, everything. So they bought it, and we got a $10 million grant for 5 years. It was capacity building of junior faculty, senior faculty, grant proposals, curriculum development. Now my students are they've got their own networks, geo-health projects, nutrition, public health nutrition. They have their own students, and they are attending conferences. So in a nutshell, science and technology in Africa is what is good. So in my little corner, by just getting the opportunity, so we need this North-South collaboration. The opportunity is important. And science, education, and being at the right place at the right time, but you have to have the knowledge to be at the right place at the right time. So every day of our lives, we are negotiating our way through our research, through our partnerships, through even our clinical trials. It's all science diplomacy.
Thank you. Now I'm thinking, because when we also do some of those things, now we have the conversation, for instance, which helps the scientists to tell the world about what it's doing. And I know that scientists have heard personal stories of people who have written things, and somebody read it, and that's how they knew this person existed wherever they were. And they then invited them for a meeting, come and talk about this thing you wrote about and all of that. So that's great. But then we have issues with scientists writing articles that are not in peer-reviewed journals. So how do we take that up?
I will throw it back at you, Dr. Odubanjo. The issue, I think, of quality and how we ensure that the science we do is good. What's in journals. So I think it's an issue as the conversation that we battle with, but we are trusting. We are hoping that the science system, and all of us will fix it. So I too, Prof, was kind of intimidated by this topic of science diplomacy when it was first pitched to me, and I thought, thank you, Jackie. And then I remembered that I'm a daughter of a diplomat, so my father was a diplomat for the Zimbabwe Foreign Service, and I now live in South Africa. And so I thought, I guess through blood somehow I could speak to this topic. But I like it, as I've been researching on it. And your question, Dr. Odubanjo, on how does knowledge go across borders?
I think there are many ways that knowledge goes across borders. I'm currently living in Nigeria, and I always say I was in Nigeria long before I went to Nigeria. Through reading, through books, through some of your best people, your best minds who I read growing up in Zimbabwe. I'm thinking of Things Fall Apart, and of course Chimamanda. So I think that there are many ways that knowledge crosses borders, and knowledge is one such thing that should travel, right? And so we should protect, and seek to increase our partnership so it travels through books, through music, through our bodies even. I believe that slavery, brought a lot to the Americas. I think Africans in America brought so much. But largely it is through partnerships and it is through friendships. And in the little corner of the world that we work in as the conversation, where really what we seek to do is to mainstream the voices of African scientists in the media, we are often surprised at how many people are reading these articles. As far afield as China, I mean, we're an online platform. So knowledge travels, right? And online is just one way that allows us to do that.
Actually, I wanted to give a few of the figures of the impact that has, which tells us that something is happening about people collaborating.
Sure.
As the articles are coming.
Lovely, thank you. I'm happy to do that. So we are a non-profit. We've been around for 3 years, and in the 3 years that we have been around, we have published close to 3,000 academics and scientists who have written for us in this new way, this new writing that's not, journal publishing, but this new way of trying to reach non-peers and go beyond journal publishing. So 3,000 of them, and their combined reach of their articles in a space of 3, cumulatively, is well over 60 million reads online. Because it's online, we're able to count it. And every single month, we're now reaching averaging 350 to 385 unique readers on the site. 350,000 unique readers that are reading stuff written by scientists and engaging with it and commenting on it. So what it tells us, I think, is that the world is looking for trusted voices, for expert voices, and I think for me, in particular, scientific voices. You're much needed. So those are the stats, and I think for us, they've encouraged us, and we are thankful to scientists who have written and, said, you know what, and I think diplomacy is about citizenry. I think that some of the new things that are needed in this era of being a scientific citizen is definitely serving the society, serving and having our science inform and direct and speak to the challenges on the ground. So active citizenship.
This is what you do. Yes. So what are the key things you think we need to know? How important is this? I think earlier we were talking about one of the speakers in this session who couldn't make it here because of visa issues. So again, some things are hampering or hindering collaborations. So should we be worried, about not being able to, link up across borders and limitations and all of that? Should we be worried? Is there any benefit to science diplomacy?
Definitely we should be worried. My day-to-day work, when I wake up every morning, I'm assigned to do international relations for the Academy of Science of South Africa since 2015 when I joined the Academy. And one of the things, to answer you, Dr. Odibanjo, chairperson, is that all the team members that I work with that are originally from South Africa and they have passports that are South African, they've been given what we call diplomatic passports or official passports, including some members of the council, that so as to ease travel for them and visa issues. So I wake up there in the morning and talk to our scientists that require that kind of service, and I enable that the service to happen for them. So in terms of the South African young scientists and senior scientists that really would require that, they have always found assistance from me And I think that can be possible from other countries as well to be able to enable movement of scientists easily. But to come back to your initial introduction, that you say there are 3 levels or definitions of science diplomacy, which is science in diplomacy, where science is used to inform foreign policy. And the second one is diplomacy for science, where diplomacy facilitates international collaboration. And the third one being science for diplomacy, where scientific cooperation improves international relations. If I had PowerPoint, Chairperson, I would have put the 3 circles together, and the intersection of those 3 circles would be science academies. And that would mean science academies are able to do the 3 parts of diplomacy if they really apply themselves a little bit in terms of what they do. Because obviously all that which we do, and we say we are influencing policy nationally, the reverse is true. That when you influence policy in other countries, then it becomes diplomacy. And the diplomacy that you need to be doing is, first of all, aligned to national interests, and therefore moves further to how then the academy influences the relationships with other countries that maybe are neighboring or within the region where it is located. Yeah.
Okay, great. One of the things that fosters collaboration.
Thank you. Small workshop, and we have been collaborating quite well. I think my third article is the conversation for almost 2 years, and I can say that was I think an opportunity for us to turn our publication, research publication in journals into something for public understanding. I can tell you it was not so simple. I understand also that we had that editors who were always guiding us in order to turn that into very simple understanding information. And I can tell you that it's really worked quite well and we're collaborating.
Education training. So let's talk after this. And in my 15 seconds, I just wanted to say that I think it's to speak to Prof. Kujanga around reaching governments and all of that. And for me as a science policy scholar, I think that one of the things I'm passionate about is that I think science needs to speak to society, needs to be visible to the people that need it. And in a way that's what we do as the conversation. We're trying to say scientists in Africa need to be visible in Africa and practically help society. Our Africa, you've got the knowledge, but I think a lot of times, again, back to the colleague from Botswana, I think, we need journals, we need all of that. So I understand impact factors, but I think we need to build social equity, and we do that by demonstrating impact in our own societies and being visible and speaking directly to the issues as they happen.
Encourage young scientists not just to focus on publishing journal articles or perish, but to communicate.
Well, let me give you a good example. I was coming on this panel, I did my homework, I have all these papers, and then Dr. Dubanjo told me that you have to be simple about this. So yes, in our line of work, if you don't, in fact, scientists don't know how to communicate. So as part of this partnership, they taught us, we will have a group come from CDC and teach us how to translate our journal article to one-page article for policy, and we also run a social mobilization program to teach us how we can communicate to the community. But this collaboration really was just wonderful. It made me more human and out of my laboratory. Because you're doing all this wonderful work, but if you're not able to get it down to the community, sometimes you're in the community, and if you fail to communicate, you'll be driven out. In Cameroon, we were collaborating there. Someone said the small blood we were taking was being used to treat people in the main hospital. So after 3 years of being in the village, we got driven out because we were using their blood for juju or something. So communication is absolutely essential to let people buy into what you're doing.
Thank you very much. So how do we get maybe younger scientists, you said, to start looking towards this kind of communication, not just the journals?
Yeah, I think we've said a lot of things today, starting from yesterday. The main thing is, for me, sometimes I think that it's too late for some of us. But now we have young academies. How can we change the status quo? What has not worked before? Where do we want to see ourselves? First of all, we need to think globally in terms of looking at science diplomacy, but we have to act locally. Diplomacy starts from home. First of all, there has to be public understanding of science, which is very, very necessary. And that is one of the areas I've dedicated my life to since I ran away from the lab. And white rats chased me out of the laboratory. But the main thing is, how do we start this? We should not be alone. The media, community, when you talk about polio, that's an area where religious leaders, traditional leaders, and so on and so forth, were able to do something. You also look at avian flu. If something happens now in China or elsewhere, it's not only society that will be worried. Everybody will be worried. And those who will make money out of it, they will tell you, go and wash yourself with salt water and so on and so forth. So the main thing is for us to equip ourselves. Look at who are the partners we can work with. Like I said before, the World Federation of Science Journalists trained over 90 journalists across Africa and the Middle East to communicate science. Those journalists are in our countries. Quite a number of countries are here that when I get there, I don't need to go to a hotel because there's a journalist that reports the science. We can start from there. The other thing is media organizations, social media, and so on and so forth. There are people they call social media influencers. These are people who don't have content. A lot of the time you get WhatsApp message sent as received. I'm sure we know some of these things. People will send you rubbish and they say send as received. We need to put our content into this. Yesterday was World Pneumonia Day. There are short format videos we can produce, 1 minute, on different areas of science that we know. So that when people are equipped, they know what the science is, they know what the issues are. Our responses will be different from the way we are because everybody understands some of these things. And I know that they've done that. I have a publication, I think from the US, that look at public understanding of science, which are some of the things we can go back and start thinking about. We may not need to look for funding for some of these things, but let's look at collaborations that can help us initially so that within our countries, we can have those perspectives, and when it comes to now globally, we know what to do because we have linkages already.
Actually, I want to take us into something else, which is what are the challenges or hindrances, to achieving the kind of science diplomacy we want on the continent. If we had a frank talk about that, we'll touch on some very thorny issues. We'll talk about visa. We'll leave that out. But anyway, I want to thank the panelists. I think like Prof reviewed, difficult post sometimes. I get you to twist what you have, and she had prepared very much, but turned it all around. I apologize. But I want to thank you all for being very cooperative, open to the changes and all of that. Please give them a round of applause. And next, give yourself a round of applause. See you same time next week. See you all. Thank you.